What does a $3 bottle of vanilla extract do to a deer that a $50 jug of commercial attractant can't? It stops him. Not attracts him, not lures him, not calls him in from 300 yards. It stops him, dead in his tracks, nose down, in your shooting lane, for the 5 to 10 seconds you need to make a shot. And that difference between a deer that's passing through and a deer that's standing still with his head down is the difference between filling a tag and driving home empty. I hunted whitetails for 20 years without consistent success, saw plenty of deer, had opportunities, watched bucks cruise past at 30 yards while I fumbled with a grunt call, or tried to convince myself I could make a shot on a walking animal through a gap in the brush. Then I met an old man at a check station in Coffee County, Tennessee. That's the Duck River bottom country between Tullahoma and Manchester, where the cedar thickets meet the hardwood hollows and the ridges push deer into predictable travel corridors. He was 86 years old, had a 6-point in the bed of a Ford that looked older than he did, and when I asked him what he used for scent, he pulled a bottle of McCormick vanilla extract out of his jacket pocket, like he was showing me his car keys. He said he'd been using it since the 1960s and that his father used it before him. He'd killed over 40 deer using nothing but vanilla extract, a Winchester 94, and patience. Said it wasn't a lure. It's not a lure. It's a stopper. And that one word changed how I understood everything about curiosity scents. What I'm going to break down is 3 layers of why vanilla works, and each one goes deeper than the last. The surface explanation is the one most people stop at. The second layer is where it gets interesting. And the third layer is something I've never heard anyone on a hunting show talk about. Plus, near the end, there's a way to mix vanilla with one other ingredient that extends the scent from a few hours to a few days and turns your entry trail into a secondary attraction system. Before we get into the setup, a quick note on legality. Vanilla extract is a scent, not a food product in the way bait laws define food. In the vast majority of states, using vanilla as a curiosity scent or cover scent is legal even where baiting is banned. A poster on the Tennessee Deer Hunting Forum asked this exact question, and the consensus from experienced hunters and even a wildlife officer who participated was that scent attractants are legal because the deer isn't consuming anything. That said, I'd still check your state regulations. Some states define bait broadly enough that any substance placed to attract deer could technically qualify. 2 minutes on your state wildlife agency's website clears it up. I've never found a state where vanilla extract is specifically restricted, but regulations change and I'm not a lawyer. The first layer is the one you've probably heard before. Vanilla works as a cover scent. The logic is simple. It's a strong, pleasant, non-threatening odor that masks human scent. A deer downwind of your stand picks up vanilla instead of deodorant, laundry detergent, or the gasoline you pumped that morning. This is the surface-level explanation, and it's partially true. Hunters on the GON forum have been using it this way since at least the early 1970s. One poster said he'd been buying pure vanilla extract for this purpose for over 30 years and spraying it on his boots before every walk-in. A hunter in Chattooga County, Georgia, shot an 8-point that was actively smelling a bush he'd sprayed with vanilla just minutes before. But cover scent is only part of the story, and it's the least interesting part. If vanilla only masked your smell, it would be no better than pine spray or earth cover scent or any of the other products on the shelf. I used Dead Downwind for 3 seasons and can't point to a single sit where it made a measurable difference on camera. Nose Jammer, which costs about $14 a can and claims to work on the same curiosity principle, smells suspiciously similar to vanilla. I'm not saying it is vanilla in a different can, but if you held both up to your nose and had to pick which one was the baking aisle product, you'd have a hard time. Vanilla does something those products don't. Curiosity is the second layer, and this is where it gets interesting. Vanilla extract doesn't just hide your scent. It makes deer actively stop and investigate the source. Not every deer every time. I want to be honest about that. Some deer ignore it, some catch a whiff and keep moving. But a significant percentage particularly does, and younger bucks in the 1.5 to 2.5-year-old age class will lock on to the scent, walk directly to the source, put their nose to the ground or the wick, and stand there trying to figure out what they're smelling. On the Archery Talk forum, a thread with over 63,000 views documented dozens of hunters describing this exact behavior. One posted that he watched a 6-point buck 100 yards away drop off a ridge heading toward a field, catch the vanilla scent downwind, reverse course, and walk on a straight line directly to the scent wick at 15 yards. His brother shot the buck while it was licking the wick. 5 more deer did the same thing that evening. A Connecticut hunter using a commercial product called Vanilla Killa, which turned out to be nothing more than vanilla extract in a different bottle, reported the same behavior across multiple seasons. A Tennessee hunter said half his bow kills over an 11-year stretch came from deer that were drawn to vanilla. 2 bucks on his wall died because they stopped at a vanilla-treated wick long enough for a clean shot. He emphasized one thing that I think is the key. It works best on private land. On public land, where deer get hit with every scent product under the sun from dozens of different hunters, the response is weaker because the deer have been conditioned to associate unfamiliar smells with human presence. On private land, where the pressure is lighter and the deer haven't been educated by a parade of commercial attractants, vanilla triggers a curiosity response that's almost reliable. That observation lines up with something I noticed on my own ground. I tested vanilla on a private lease in Cherokee County, North Carolina. That's the southern Appalachian mountain country along the Hiwassee River, where the hardwood coves run deep and the terrain funnels deer through narrow creek crossings. Over 2 weeks in early October, I set out vanilla-soaked cotton wicks on 3 different trails, each about 15 to 20 yards from my hawk climbing stand, roughly the distance from a pitcher's mound to home plate. On the Leupold trail cameras I had monitoring each wick, I got photos of deer investigating the vanilla source on 9 of 14 nights. Not all during legal hours, and not all mature deer, but the pattern was clear enough to keep running it. The response varied by time of day. Evening sits produced more wick investigations than morning sits, probably because deer were moving more actively toward food and were already in a seeking mindset. Morning deer heading to bed seemed less curious and more focused on getting to cover. I'll be upfront, I don't have a control comparison from the same property because I didn't run untreated wicks alongside the vanilla ones. That's a flaw in my data. What I can tell you is that I had more deer within bow range during those 2 weeks than in the previous 4 weeks combined on the same stands without vanilla. Could be coincidence, could be the start of pre-rut movement, but it was consistent enough that I haven't stopped using it since. This is one of the techniques I wrote up in the Buck Hunter's Bible, the field guide I put together with 77 tricks like this one, each with the biology behind it so you understand the why, not just the what. It covers scent control that costs nothing, stand placement by terrain, all 3 rut phases with different tactics for each, and a full chapter of old-timer methods from the 1950s through the 1970s that were never written down until now. There's a pre-hunt reference card at the back you can print and take to the stand. Links in the description below this video, or if you're watching on a TV, pull out your phone and scan the QR code on screen. All right, let me get into the 3rd layer, because this is the part that changes how you think about the whole thing. Vanillin, the primary aromatic compound in vanilla extract, is not a synthetic or exotic molecule. It occurs naturally in the lignin of oak wood. When oak bark decomposes, when acorns break down on the forest floor, when deadfall timber rots in a creek bottom, one of the volatile compounds released is vanillin. A white-tailed deer living in an oak-dominated forest has been smelling trace amounts of vanillin its entire life. It's part of the baseline scent profile of healthy, food-rich habitat. When you pour vanilla extract on a cotton wick and hang it on a branch, the concentrated vanillin that evaporates off that wick doesn't register to the deer's nose as foreign substance placed by a human. It registers as concentrated version of something I already associate with food, cover, and safety. The curiosity response isn't random. The deer is investigating what it interprets as an unusually rich patch of the same scent signature its environment naturally produces. The way a strong whiff of baking bread makes you turn your head even when you're not hungry. This is why vanilla works, and cherry-scented cover spray doesn't. Cherry is foreign. Vanilla is familiar at a molecular level. The deer's olfactory system, with its 297 million receptors, is sorting through thousands of compounds in the air at any given moment and comparing them against a lifetime of scent memory. Vanillin matches an existing entry in that database. It doesn't trigger alarm because it's not new. It triggers investigation because the concentration is higher than normal, and in a deer's world, an unusual concentration of a food-associated scent is worth checking out. If you watch the turpentine video, this is the same principle. Terpenes from gum spirits match the natural terpene profile of the surrounding forest. Vanillin from vanilla extract matches the natural vanillin profile of an oak-dominated habitat. Both work because they authenticate rather than mask, and both fail in environments where they don't belong. If you hunt pure pine barrens with zero oak in the canopy or on the ground, the vanillin signal has no match in the deer's scent memory. It becomes a novelty rather than a familiar concentration, and the response is weaker and less predictable. Now for the application, and this is where I made mistakes before I got it right. The first time I used it, I poured half a bottle on a stump. Way too much. A hunter on Archery Talk described the exact same mistake. The only time he'd had deer spook was when he used too much and the scent was too strong. The vanillin concentration overwhelms the natural background level and trips the alarm instead of the curiosity response. Think of it like perfume. A hint of it makes you lean in. A cloud of it makes you back away. Same principle with deer, except their nose is roughly 1,000 times more sensitive than yours. Application starts with a quarter teaspoon, about the size of a pea, on a cotton ball or felt wick. Hang it on a branch 4 to 5 feet off the ground, roughly chest height on a whitetail, about 15 to 20 yards from your stand in the direction you expect deer to approach. The goal is to place the wick so that a deer on the trail hits the scent plume, turns to investigate, and stops broadside in your shooting lane while it tries to find the source. You're not trying to draw deer from a quarter mile away. The effective draw range of vanilla on a calm morning is roughly 50 to 75 yards, maybe 100 in perfect humidity, with a light steady breeze. You're stopping deer that are already moving through your area and giving them a reason to pause in the worst possible spot for them and the best possible spot for you. I hang 2 wicks per sit now, one on each side of my primary shooting lane, about 10 yards apart. If a deer comes from the left and catches the right wick, it turns broadside crossing toward the scent. If it comes from the right, same thing in reverse. Either way, the deer stops in the lane. I didn't figure this out from reading about it. I figured it out after watching 3 deer in one evening catch the scent plume and angle toward the wick in a way that gave me no shot, because the wick was on the wrong side of my lane for their approach direction. 2 wicks fix that problem permanently. Timing your application matters. If you're doing a morning hunt, apply the wick right after you settle into your stand. For an evening sit, apply when you arrive in the afternoon. On cotton, vanilla evaporates in about 4 to 6 hours, depending on temperature and humidity. In cool weather below 50 degrees, the evaporation slows, and you get maybe 6 to 8 hours. In warm early season above 70 degrees, it burns off in 3 to 4 hours. The fix for extending the scent window is simple, and it came from a poster on Archery Talk who'd been doing it for years. Mix 1 ounce of vanilla extract with 8 ounces of water and about 1/4 ounce of canola oil. Shake it up and put it in a small spray bottle. The oil acts as a carrier that slows evaporation. Instead of 4 to 6 hours, you get roughly 10 to 12 hours of scent release from a single application on a cotton wick. The canola oil itself is odorless to human noses at that concentration, but it extends the effective window long enough that a morning application lasts through an all-day sit. One more application method that the old man at the check station used, and I've adopted. Spray the vanilla mixture on the soles of your rubber boots before you walk in. Every step you take deposits a faint vanilla trail on the ground. A deer that crosses your walking path later in the morning doesn't hit a wall of human scent. It hits a faint vanilla trail mixed with whatever ground scent your boots picked up. Several forum hunters describe deer trailing their boot path directly to the stand when they use this method. One GON poster said he sprayed it on his boots for a decade and actually had deer follow his entry trail to the base of his tree. I use it on the boot soles, but I stop applying about 50 yards from the stand, roughly half a football field, so the trail leads to my shooting zone, not to my tree trunk. The last thing you want is a buck following your vanilla trail directly to the base of your tree and looking up. Ask me how I know. It happened once in Cherokee County during my first week using the boot method. A spike followed my trail from about 80 yards out, walked it like a bloodhound, and stopped right below my stand, staring up at me like I owed him money. I stopped spraying the last 50 yards after that. Do not use vanilla with alcohol as the base. Some cheap imitation vanilla products use an alcohol carrier instead of a water and glycerin base. A traditional bow hunter magazine poster warned against this specifically. Don't buy the vanilla with alcohol in it. Deer don't like it. Pure vanilla extract does contain some alcohol naturally from the extraction process, but the concentration is low enough that it doesn't seem to bother deer. The heavy imitation products that are mostly alcohol with artificial vanillin flavoring are a different story. Stick with pure extract or cheap imitation that uses water and propylene glycol as the base. A Michigan Sportsman poster tested both and said, imitation worked just as well for camera surveys, but I prefer the pure McCormick extract for hunting because the vanillin concentration is higher and the scent is richer. The pure bottle costs about $3 to $4. The large imitation bottle costs under $2. Either works. The deer aren't reading labels. One more detail on the imitation versus pure debate. Some hunters on the forums reported that imitation vanilla with a heavier artificial sweetener base actually produce stronger short-range curiosity responses, possibly because the synthetic vanillin is more concentrated per ounce than the natural version. I haven't tested this side by side on camera, so take it for what it's worth. The pure extract smells better to my nose, and that's why I use it, but the deer may not share my preference. 2 warnings that came up repeatedly in the forums, and I need to address directly. First, if you hunt in bear country, vanilla is a bear magnet. A Tennessee hunter posted that he had a very interesting experience with a black bear that kept climbing his tree after he applied vanilla. An Archery Talk poster from Michigan's Upper Peninsula said he stopped using Vanilla Killa entirely because it attracted so many bears that the deer avoided the area. I had a buddy in the UP who ran it for 1 season and quit because he had more bear encounters than deer encounters. He switched to straight wind discipline and killed a better buck that year than in any of the previous 5. Sometimes the best scent strategy is no scent at all. In any state with a significant black bear population, from the southern Appalachians through Pennsylvania and anywhere in the northern tier, from New York through Minnesota, factor this in before you commit. Second, and this is important, a buddy of mine who hunts public land in Sauk County, Wisconsin, that's the bluff country along the Wisconsin River, where the oak ridges and river bottoms create some of the best public whitetail hunting in the Midwest, came to the same conclusion independently. He used vanilla on private land with consistent results and got nothing on public ground. A Michigan hunter with 47 years of experience offered the most balanced take I found anywhere in the forums. He said vanilla works as a curiosity scent that spikes interest when deer are already in the area, but it's not a long-range lure that pulls deer from far away. On highly pressured public land, mature deer have survived multiple seasons of hunters throwing every scent product available at them. Those deer associate any unfamiliar scent concentration with human activity and avoid it. Vanilla works best on lightly hunted private land where the deer haven't been educated. On public land, he recommended using nothing at all and focusing entirely on wind discipline and stand placement. I think that's right, and it's an important limitation. If you hunt pressured public ground, skip this video and go watch the one about entry routes. The fundamentals matter more than any scent product on properties where the deer have been to school. Everything in this video, plus about 60 more field-tested techniques, are in the Buck Hunter's Bible. It's the field reference I keep going back to because every trick has the reasoning behind it, not just instructions. Scent control, stand placement by terrain, rut phase tactics, and a full chapter of old-timer methods. There's a pre-hunt reference card at the back that fits in your pack. I spent 2 years testing everything in it, and it's in the description below. Point your phone at the QR code on screen if you're watching on a TV. The old man at the check station didn't explain any of the biology to me. He didn't know about vanillin in oak lignin or olfactory receptor counts. He just knew that his father had poured vanilla on a rag tied to a branch in 1952, and a buck had walked up to it and stood there long enough to shoot. He told me the word stopper 3 times in a 2-minute conversation, each time slower than the last, and every time he said it, he pointed at the 6-point in his truck like it was the evidence and the verdict rolled into one. I went home and bought a bottle of McCormick Pure Vanilla Extract for $3.40. Applied it to a cotton wick, hung it at chest height on a whitetail, 15 yards from my stand, and sat down in my banded jacket in my Hawk Climber with my Remington across my lap, and my elite archery bow cased in the truck for the afternoon sit, and waited. A doe came through at 7:15, crossed the scent plume, turned 90 degrees, walked directly to the wick, and stood there with her nose 6 inches from the cotton for what my watch said was 11 seconds but felt like an hour. I didn't shoot her, but I sat there knowing that if she'd been the buck I was after, I'd have had more time for that shot than I've ever had in 20 years of hunting. Nobody who uses this talks about it at the pro shop. Not because it's a secret, but because telling someone you hunt with a bottle of baking extract from the grocery store sounds about as serious as telling them you hunt with a pool noodle. But the forum data is 20 years deep, across a dozen states, and the pattern is consistent. Vanilla stops deer. Not every deer, not every time, but often enough and long enough that it turns marginal encounters into clean shots. One bottle, one cotton ball, 15 yards from your stand. Try it on your next sit and watch what happens when a deer hits the scent plume. The nose goes down, the feet stop, and for 5 or 10 seconds, the woods hold their breath. What you do with those seconds is up to you.